Out front next, lawyer-in-chief of President Trump going it alone, essentially acting as his own attorney. As the legal pressure mounts, is he making a dangerous mistake? Plus, the Trump administration telling Russia directly, no new sanctions, don't worry about it. What happened? When did the president change his mind, and why didn't he tell Nikki Haley? And the hero Southwest pilot, one of the Navy's first female fighter pilots, saves more than 100 lives after a midair crisis. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news. No collusion. That from President Trump tonight. Speaking at Mar-a-Lago, the president slamming special counsel Bob Mueller's investigation, saying there was no collusion, no fewer than 5 times. This, as we know, the president is increasingly acting as his own lead attorney, going it alone, shunning the advice of his legal team. Tonight, the president calling the Russia investigation a hoax created by Democrats. Here he is just moments ago.
There was no collusion. And that's been so found, as you know, by the House Intelligence Committee. There's no collusion. There was no collusion with Russia other than by the Democrats, or as I call them, the obstructionists, because they truly are obstructionists. So we are giving tremendous amounts of paper. This was really a hoax created largely by the Democrats as a way of softening the blow of a loss, which is a loss that, frankly, they shouldn't have had from the standpoint that it's very easy for them. They have a tremendous advantage in the Electoral College, and this is what it is, and this is where it came from. You look at the kind of money that was paid. Probably some went to Russia. You look at Podesta having a company in Russia where nothing happened and people don't talk about it. You look at the fact that their server, the DNC server, was never gotten by the FBI. Why did the FBI take it? The FBI takes what they want. They go in, they wouldn't get the server. This is a hoax. As far as the investigation, nobody has ever been more transparent than I have instructed our lawyers. Be totally transparent. I believe we've given them 1.4 million pages of documents, if you can believe this, and haven't used, that I know of, or for the most part, presidential powers or privilege. So we are hopefully coming to the end. It is a bad thing for our country, very, very bad thing for our country. But there has been no collusion. They won't find any collusion. It doesn't exist.
This coming as President Trump does appear to be going it alone, essentially acting as his own lead attorney. This is according to sources who say the president feels misled and no longer wants anyone else in charge. It is a decision with massive implications, given that President Trump's personal lawyer and fixer of a dozen years is under criminal investigation, and all of his documents and communications have been seized by federal prosecutors. That means the president, who does not have a law degree and has never practiced law, is trying to essentially take over his own defense. And today he went on offense on Twitter about the Russia investigation, tweeting, "Slippery James Comey, the worst FBI director in history, was not fired because of the phony Russia investigation, where, by the way, there was no collusion except by the Dems." Of course, there is a huge problem with a tweet like that, though, and that is this. The president himself said last year on national television that Comey was fired because of Russia.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
President Trump also lashing out today against Stormy Daniels and her sketch of a man she claims threatened her in a Las Vegas parking lot. He wrote a sketch years later about a non-existent man, a total con job, playing the fake news media for fools, but they know it. It's a statement that could open up the president up to more questions. Daniels' attorney coming on CNN with Wolf Blitzer to say this.
We're likely going to be amending our complaint. We're looking at doing that now to add a defamation claim directly against the president.
And let's go to Jeff Zeleny now, who was at that press conference where the president, as we said, Jeff said there was no collusion at least 5 times in West Palm Beach when he appeared with the Japanese prime minister.
Aaron, it certainly seemed like President Trump was responding to questions about this investigation from a year ago. Never mind the fact that there have been guilty pleas. Never mind the fact that this has developed so much. He's still using the word hoax, going back to what he has called it from the very beginning. But he did shed some new light on questions that have been lingering. He seemed to downplay suggestions that he would fire Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, in fact, the acting Attorney General in this matter, and fire Bob Mueller. He said, this has been discussed for 4 or 5 months. He seemed to downplay it, didn't rule it out entirely. Then he went on to say this: we want the investigation to be over with, done with, put behind us so we can get back to business. The question, of course, how does that ever happen when he doesn't acknowledge the full extent of the investigation? Of course, this has changed so much in the last week and a half or so because of Michael Cohen, the person who's closest to him of really any other advisor, is now in his own legal trouble, as we know. So the president trying to say no collusion at all. He cited that House Intelligence Committee, the findings of that. We should remember, Aaron, of course, that was the Republican findings of that committee that said, there was nothing to see there. The Democrats disagreed with that. The Senate still investigating, and the Bob Mueller investigation very much alive here. So the president, in a bit of a denial, saying it's still a hoax, as we know, acting essentially as his own lawyer and going his own way here. But Aaron, one other thing, interestingly, at the very end of the news conference as he was walking away, asked about Russia's sanctions, he said, we'll do sanctions as soon as they deserve it. Of course, that would be in the eye of the beholder. That's one of the reasons he changed his mind earlier this week.
Pretty interesting.
Aaron.
As soon as they deserve it, that is something that will get many talking. Thank you very much, Jeff Zeleny. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. I want to go now, though, to the former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Harry Sandick. That, of course, is where the Michael Cohen case is right now. Wendy Murphy is the former prosecutor with us, and David Gergen served as advisor to 4 presidents. Harry, look, as you heard Jeff reporting, the president essentially acting as his own lawyer. And in a sense, you hear that now when he's saying, going off with his list of things. And as Jeff said, sort of hearkening back to a year ago before there were guilty pleas and all sorts of indictments. But he is tweeting one thing that clearly contradicts what he said before. This is what happens when someone who isn't a lawyer essentially takes on their own defense.
That's absolutely right. And this is not a good idea. He's saying one thing, there's videotape showing something exactly the opposite. He's continuing to call the investigation a hoax when many people have gone into court under oath, admitted that they've committed serious crimes. Even if it doesn't lead back to him, to say the investigation is a hoax at this point doesn't really make any sense. And everything that he says in these tweets, in these press conferences, is at least potentially material for cross-examination. Should he ever be a witness, it can be used against him for any purpose.
And Wendy, Gloria Borger, has been doing a lot of this reporting on how the president is essentially running his own case, right? We talk about Jay Sekulow, who is not a lawyer with expertise in this particular area, who is his attorney, but the lead attorney obviously is gone, and that is apparently now essentially Donald J. Trump. One source telling Gloria Trump believes that, quote, all of this will eventually collapse on itself because he's innocent of anything related to Russia, which is certainly what we just heard, that defiance at that press conference. Is this the right path for a man to take who believes he's innocent, just to say, I'll do it myself?
The only way it's the right path is if he's right, that there is no end game that holds him accountable. And it looks like that's a big gamble, but I suppose it's possible. And if at the end of the day he faces no charges, he gets in no trouble, and none of the documents connect him to the Daniels payment, and there's nothing there with regard to him and Russia, then he not only comes across as a bit arrogant, but kind of smart and strategic. The problem is, most of what he says, if you just think about it from a defense perspective, from a criminal defense perspective, even from a civil lawyer's defense perspective, there's no advantage to saying things like, this is about to collapse on its own, and it's all about to wrap up soon. I mean, Cohen just had his office searched. That does not look like an investigation that's about to end soon. So, in a sense, he sets himself up for looking like he doesn't have a clue what's going on. He definitely is not approaching this as a chess game, which you want to do in a case that's a lot of politics mixed with criminal defense strategy. He's playing it much more like a politician than a defense attorney, and I think that's dangerous.
And of course, if again, his behavior, people like Trey Gowdy have called this out, right? If there's nothing to hide, then why always act as if there is? Why be apoplectic, for example, about the raid on your personal attorney if there's nothing that's problematic that could be unveiled in that raid. David Gergen, the president, of course, is coming out as all this is happening. He said something else tonight at that press conference, which is he backing off a little bit off firing Rod Rosenstein and Bob Mueller, which, of course, he himself said the other day at a meeting with his cabinet, we'll have to see about Bob Mueller. Well, here's what he just said moments ago with the Japanese prime minister.
As far as the two gentlemen you told me about, they've been saying I'm going to get rid of them for the last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and they're still here. So we want to get the investigation over with, done with, put it behind us, and we have to get back to business.
David, that is backing off big time.
Lincoln was quoted as saying that a man who serves as his own lawyer has a fool for a client. Donald Trump could well pay attention to that. It's an old proverb, but you do need in capacity to tiptoe through dangerous minefields when you're being criminally investigated. And I do think this president is making a leap to think that he is Superman and doesn't need anybody else's help. He does need help. He does need legal protection. I thought overall in the press conference that what he was doing more than anything else was trying to keep his options open.
Yep.
That he leaned a little bit away from where he'd been, but he kept his options open on Rosenstein and Mueller. He kept his options open on North Korea, on going back into the Trans-Pacific partnership. On one issue after another, I think he was trying not to be definitive because it can go either way, and I think that is also something he needs to think about because, as in the sanctions case, he's undercut his own representative at the UN, Nikki Haley, by basically saying, she had it all wrong.
Right, which we are going to have a lot more on that because there's been some big developments on that. But Harry, this is all coming, when you talk about the criminal investigation into Michael Cohen, the president's personal attorney and fixer. The New York Attorney General did something today that could change the game. He's asking New York State to basically change the law in New York State. So if someone is convicted and pardoned by the President of the United States, they can still be tried in New York, and therefore they could still go to prison if they are convicted in New York. That could change the game for Michael Cohen, because if he's thinking, I'll just stick and be loyal to the president because I know he'll pardon me, maybe all of a sudden you say, wait, maybe not.
Right, there's something behind door number 2 at this point, and it could be an investigation either by the New York Attorney General or potentially by a district attorney in New York, the Manhattan District Attorney or someone else. New York has this law which gives defendants more rights than the U.S. Constitution entitles them to, and the Attorney General is asking the state legislature to amend this law so that if someone is charged and tried or pleads guilty in federal court, that they can also be prosecuted a second time in New York State court, even if they're pardoned.
So the president cannot save you from prison, essentially, if you are convicted.
That's right.
And that obviously could be very significant when you're talking about this and the developments and whether Michael Cohen ever does turn on his boss. Thank you all very much. And next, breaking news, President Trump changing his mind on imposing additional sanctions on Russia. Just moments ago, though, insisting that no one has been tougher on Moscow. Plus, the man who the White House aides reportedly say is the unofficial chief of staff.
What is Hannity? Is he an opinion journalist? Is he an advocacy? I'm a talk show host.
And a chief of staff. And calm under pressure.
Yeah, we have a part of the aircraft missing, so we're going to need to slow down a bit.
Just imagine what was going on when she had that calm. Who is the hero pilot who saved more than 100 lives?